Good evening and welcome to the Seatown Early Evening News for the Elderly. As you will know, if you're a regular watcher, this news programme is designed specifically to send you off to bed with a smile on your face and some good advice on how to get a good night's rest. So, no bombing stories, no war-torn tales, no tsunamis, and certainly no gruesome murders.
Here are the headlines, and don't worry, as the stories will be repeated later. This might be a good time to nip to the kitchen and make a fresh cup of tea. Leave out the whiskey for the moment. There was a fire in the Seatown Hotel last night. Lots of big, strong firemen attended with very attractive uniforms. More on that later.
We have a transport update from Mrs. Kelly's bus pass marathon journey to visit her daughter in York. She's on her 4th day of jumping on and off buses. We will be interviewing her later in a bus shelter.
Our sports desk tonight will be following the Seatown Lawn Bowling Tournament, which is causing great controversy due to the infighting and unfortunately timed knee replacement.
We'll also be including our ever popular weather, health and welfare section with good advice, old wives' tales and an amazing hospital strategy.
Well, listeners, you should be sitting with your tea and biscuits, cat fed, door locked and hot water bottles slipped under the duvet.
We're now going to our outside broadcaster, Rod, who's at the hotel.
Oh, thank you. Yes, here I am outside the Seatown Hotel, and what a mess this has been. Lots of rooms destroyed, though thankfully no serious injuries. Dozens of people were seen running from the fire in their dressing gowns last night and hiding from the cameras. I'm presuming they were hiding because not all may have been in bed with their appropriate nearest and dearest or significant other. But who am I to say what goes on in these fancy hotels? The firefighters did a grand job as usual, and I'm sure raised a few heart levels with the female staff of the hotel. The barmaids were seen refreshing their lipstick and sprinkling alcohol about to keep the fire going a bit longer. But keep your eyes open for an anticipated sale of smoke-damaged bedding and table linen. You may pick up a bargain. I'll now land you back to the studio if they haven't dropped off.
Thank you for that, Rod. We always knew you liked to report a good blaze. Now for some political news. There was nobody available from the major parties to comment on the new law that's going through Parliament at the moment, which will cancel all driving licences for those over the age of 75. This is a bit of a shocker, but we did manage to get Lord Madness from the raving loony party to give his opinion from his stately home outside Seatown.
Good evening, Your Lordship. You will no doubt be aware that the latest government proposal is for nobody to be driving over the age of 75. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, not driving over 75, eh? Well, I'll tell you what, in our party, we could step further. Say the law should be expanded to allow for peaceful euthanasia on everyone's 75th birthday. This would solve a lot of our problems, wouldn't it? Eh? It would certainly solve the problem of the overcrowding on the roads, especially those little compact cars with their old drivers just peering over the steering wheel going at 20 miles an hour. In fact, it would cut down the elderly population in general, wouldn't it, and save millions in nursing home care. No more sudden untidy deaths all over the place. And I'll tell you what, the money freed up could go to the pensions for the rest of us. Another matter, tell you what, those women always bleating on about equality. Well, they would have it, wouldn't they? They would go at 75 just like the rest of us.
Steady on now.
Not going at 80, 90, 102, wrinkled, useless, no good. I'll tell you what, they meant it. This is our policy and I recommend it to the House.
I've never heard of anything so outrageous and callous. That's disgraceful.
Let's not be too hasty now. I can see some merit in getting rid of the politicians right now, as they're ancient and also could cull in sheltered housing projects to make room for the upwardly mobile. Please, viewers, let's have your views on this. On postcards preferably, not this newfangled stuff.
Back to Mrs. Kelly's marathon bus journey. We are joining her in a bus shelter in Hull. As well as travelling, she is also writing her book, aptly named bus stations I have known.
Hello, Mrs. Kelly. We're lucky to have caught you here. How is it going?
Just grand, thank you. I'm on the 4th day of travel now.
Where did you start from?
I started from Boscombe bus station. Then I went to Ringwood. Then I went to Southampton. And eventually it was London. Took me 27 buses to get there.
27? Wow. Well, how did it go in London, though?
Well, I've been studying Urdu for the last couple of months because I was told that nobody in London spoke English. I'll never read that Seatown news again.
Well, now tell me, I'm interested to know, why did you use the public transport in your bus passes? Why not National Express or even the train?
Well, the Prime Minister promised that we could have free bus travel. So I took her at her word and decided to go on the public transport.
So what are you going to do when you get to your daughter's?
I don't know yet. I haven't made my mind up, but I'm sure it'll be very nice when it gets there.
Well, we must leave Mrs. Kelly there, and let's just hope that, well, a bus pass doesn't run out before she reaches her destination. That could get nasty. This is John, returning you to the studio.
We wouldn't advise our viewers to follow in Mrs. Kelly's footsteps or bus stops.
There is some breaking news. We are going to get the latest from our sports editor, as there has been some more controversy at the Clifftop Lawn Bowling Tournament this week.
Yes, controversial indeed. This is your sports editor reporting live from the bowling green. And I am shocked and dismayed at the behaviour of some of the contestants and indeed some of the spectators too at this week's tournament between the Bournemouth Rollers and the Dorset Jacks. A great amount of alcohol had been consumed before the tournament began here in the clubhouse you can see behind me. The result being a lot of high spirits, a lot of pushing, shoving, and even an incident of slapping on the green. Now, how that came about was that Mr. Parker, now that's a name you're probably not familiar with because he had stood in for Mr. Sharp, one of the best players in the tournament normally. Mr. Sharp had a cancellation appointment for his knee replacement operation. So Mr. Parker accused Mr. Brown of kicking one of the woods towards the jack in what was proving to be a nail-biting final. The tournament turned into chaos. People were shouting, shoving, and then there was that slapping incident that I referred to. In the end, the referee had to abandon the match and he's ordered a replay for next week. However, all was not lost. Mrs. McConnell's delightful home baking was served to the players and spectators, at least to the ones who were deemed sober enough not to throw up on the clubhouse floor. Before I go, may I make a personal comment? I know there have been calls to the authorities to stamp out this rowdy behaviour and this violence that we're seeing week after week. I would just like to add my voice to those calls. It's time the authorities stepped in. And on that note, let me hand you back to what I hope is a very peaceful television studio.
And now we're ready for the weather report with some helpful advice on how to keep cosy in the cold.
Good evening. I'm bringing you this report from outside Seatown Hospital. It will continue to be extremely cold over the next 5 days with rain and those annoying hailstones. So I've put together some useful health and welfare tips for you. Wrap up well. Turn your central heating off, to save a little bit of money, and take yourself off to the hospital. Once inside, you can have a look at the charity shops and pick up a few bargains. Now, the tea in the restaurant is quite cheap, so you could spend a pleasant hour or two reading a book that you've bought from the charity shop. Another good tip is to take yourself onto the wards and visit random patients, preferably sleeping ones or those in a coma. If you sit quietly and long enough, you will be offered a cuppa and maybe a snack from the very helpful and friendly staff. If you are out with friends, spread yourselves out a bit on the wards so that you can be less conspicuous. Now, to end your day out, and before you brave the cold again, find a comfy chair in a quiet clinic queue and have a snooze. So, take care of yourself and remember, take advantage of the NHS heating and hospitality. I'm Mary Fairweather and it's back to the studio.
Well, that's all good advice. So get your bus passes laid out for tomorrow for a nice trip to the hospital.
Okay, now it's time for bed. Hope you have a good night's sleep and remember to leave a clear path with no obstructions to the bathroom for the middle of the night meanderings. More importantly, don't put the chain on the door in case the fire brigade come and have to evacuate you in the middle of the night. You know you won't hear the alarms without your hearing aids on. So it's good night from me.
Good night, and if you survive the night, please join us tomorrow.
Good night. So, okay. I think so. What are you doing tonight? Yeah.